What's quaking, people? I am back. This is Count Richter Quake here, and welcome to the very first episode of a little series I like to call Heart of the Dice. What this is a Dungeons and Dragons focused series. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create a character. But you see, I'm not going to just make a character based on what I want to make. I'm going to let the dice decide. Here's how this is going to work. I am going to randomly roll the stats. That's the first thing I'm going to do. I'm going to roll the 6 ability scores. Now, I'm going to roll them in order. What that means is the very first roll I make is going to be the strength stat. The second roll is going to be the dexterity stat, so on and so forth for all 6. That means the character I make is stuck with these stats. I can't move them around and go, oh, well, I want to put the 18 in dex. I can't do that. This is going to be very interesting. I'm going to do that. Then I'm going to roll to randomize the race. Then I'm going to roll to randomize the background. With those 3 bits of information, I'm going to choose what class. Now, I know some of you are probably thinking, well, why don't you roll for the class too? 2 reasons I'm not going to do that. First of all, it would be extremely lucky if I roll the high dex stat and then roll the rogue. That's extremely lucky. That's probably not going to happen. So for the sake of making this a character that's actually functional in some way, I'm not going to do it that way. But also, think of it this way. When you're born, you don't get to decide what race you are. You don't get to decide what physical attributes you're born with. You don't get to decide what you're born into, what your background is. But based on the stuff you were born with, you do get to decide what you do with them. So that's how I'm going to do this. So without further ado, let's jump right into this. The first stat we're going to roll is strength. Strength is very straightforward. It's your physical ability to move things, pick up things, grapple, swing heavy weapons. It's basically your physical prowess. So here we go. The first roll is... all right, 17. This is a really high strength roll. Those of you who don't know, the way stats are rolled, 4d6 are rolled, and the lowest one is taken away, giving you the sum of the top 3 rolls, which means, if you can't do math, 18 is the highest roll you can get this way. 17, closed silver medal, baby. So this is a character that's going to have very high strength. Now, obviously, the first thing that comes to mind is going to be a fighter or a barbarian. That's obvious. Which of those are probably good options, but you don't need to be a fighter or a barbarian to benefit from having a high strength stat. Any class that uses strength-based weapons wants a high strength stat. You can have a high strength cleric and be a melee cleric. You can have a high strength wizard. So this doesn't really narrow me down yet, but it's a great thing to have a good strength stat. So let's move on to dexterity. Now, dexterity is more your agility, your speed sort of, but it's more your precision. So not only is your ability to get out of the way of things dexterity, but your ability to finesse things and, you know, your motor skills and your fine precision skills are also dexterity. So things like thieving, sleight of hand, that's also dexterity. This is what a lot of people consider the super stat, which means it's very important to have dexterity because you can get out of the way of things, but also it determines your AC, your armor class, and it also determines your initiative. Now, what initiative is, it's how quickly you can respond to things, so it's basically your turn order in combat. These are very important things to have a good stat in. So let's roll it. Dexterity is... okay, not good. 8. 8 is a -1 modifier. What that means is anything I roll in dexterity, I take 1 away from it. So if I roll a natural 20, it's actually a 19 because I have a -1 modifier in dexterity. That's not good. So already what I'm thinking is this is going to be a very big, strong character who's not very agile, is probably kind of clumsy, maybe a little older, maybe he's a little overweight. That'd be interesting. I don't think anyone really chooses to play overweight D&D characters. That could be very interesting. So let's move on. The next skill is Constitution. Now, Constitution is an extremely important stat. Constitution determines how well you can take things, how well you can withstand cold, how well you can withstand a poison. Constitution saving throws are going to be an abundant thing you have to deal with in Dungeons and Dragons. Constitution also directly equates to your hit point total. This is not a stat you want to have a low score in no matter what class you are. So fingers crossed, let's roll Constitution. Okay, 14. +2 modifier. That's not bad. That's a nice little decent middle of the road stat for Constitution. You don't want it to be a 0. You don't want it to be less than 0 for sure. +2 is respectable. I like that. The next stat, these are now your 3 mental stats. The first one being intelligence. This is also rather straightforward. Intelligence is how smart you are, right? It's basically how well you know things, how well you retain things, and how well you can analyze things that you're seeing. So investigation is also intelligence. So let's see what we get. Roll intelligence. Oh my, 16. Okay, +3 to intelligence. That's a very, very good intelligence roll. So with the high strength and the high intelligence, this is already gonna be a very interesting character. But let's keep on going. Let's see what the other stats are. The next one is wisdom. Wisdom, it's how wise you are, right? How intuitive you are is, I guess, a good way to put it. Your experience and how that leads into how you perceive the world around you. So let's roll it. Let's see what we get. Ooh, that's really bad. Okay, so wisdom is 7. That's really, really bad. That is a -2 modifier. So far, high intelligence, high strength, horrible dexterity, decent constitution, horrible wisdom. All right, so what this is telling me, this is a very strong, overweight, very young, very intelligent kid. So this is like the genius that sits in mom's basement eating Cheetos all day and writing code. That's what this is telling me right now. I'm sorry if I've offended anybody. I love you no matter what you are, but this is still a very playable character. So let's move on to the very last stat. This is charisma. This is the fun one. This is how likable you are, how persuasive you are, how magnetic you are. When you want to lie to somebody, you have to use your charisma. When you want to intimidate somebody, you use your charisma. It's basically the strength of your character. It's the gravitas of your character. Let's see what we got. Ready? All right, 13. Okay, decent, +1. So here we go. These are our stats so far. So we've got strength at 17, dexterity at 8. We've got constitution at 14. We have intelligence at 16, we have wisdom at 7, and charisma at 13. That's what we have so far, but we're not done. Every character also has a racial stat bonus, and we won't know what that's going to be until we roll our race. Let's roll our race. Now, there are going to be a few homebrewed races in this list. Don't pay much attention to them. This one right here, this one right here. We're only going to use the officially released races. Anything that was officially accessible on D&D Beyond, we're going to be able to use. Now, I have a separate spreadsheet that equates every one of these races to a number. I'm gonna roll a D100, whatever I get, that's the race I have to play. So let's not waste any time, let's just go ahead and roll it. All right, we got a 1. I don't even have to check the list because it's in order. We're an Aarakocra. Aarakocra are basically bird people, a winged people who originated on the elemental plane of air. Aarakocra soar through the sky wherever they wander. The first Aarakocra served the Wind Dukes of Akka, mighty beings of air, and were imbued with the measure of their master's power over winds. Their descendants still command echoes of that power. From below, Aarakocra look like large birds and thus are sometimes called birdfolk. Only when they roost on a branch or walk across the ground is their humanoid nature clear. Standing upright, Aarakocra are typically about 5 feet tall, and they have long, narrow legs that taper to sharp talons. Feathers cover their bodies, usually red, orange, yellow, brown, or gray. Their heads are also avian, often resembling those of parrots or eagles. All right, so Aarakocra. Creature type, it's humanoid. Your size is medium. What that means is you can be as small as 4 feet tall as 8 feet tall, but as we read earlier, they're typically about 5 feet tall. So we're not gonna really have a 7-foot Aarakocra, although that would be very interesting. Maybe an ostrich Aarakocra. Ooh, homebrew race? We'll see. So the walking speed is 30 feet. Here's what speed means in D&D. It's measured in feet. I know that may sound weird to you. How is speed measured in feet? It's because it's how far you can go in 6 seconds. That's what speed means. A typical round of combat is 6 seconds long. Your speed is how quickly you can move in that one round of combat. Walking speed is 30 feet. You also have flight. Because of your wings, you have a flying speed equal to your walking speed. Can't use this flying speed if you're wearing medium or heavy armor. Talons. This is a cool feat as well. You have talons that you can use to make unarmed strikes. When you hit with them, the strike deals 1d6 plus your strength modifier slashing damage, instead of the bludgeoning damage normal for an unarmed strike. The way unarmed strikes typically work, so a typical punch or a slap, is you do 1 plus your strength modifier. There's no rolling dice. The very few exceptions are things like this. If you have the talons feat, you can roll a d6 and add your strength modifier for your unarmed strikes. There are other classes and races that also give you options like that too. This is just one specific one. Wind Caller. Starting at 3rd level, you can cast the Gust of Wind spell with this trait without requiring a material component. Once you cast a spell with this trait, you can't do so again until you finish a long rest. You can also cast the spell using any spell slots you have of 2nd level or higher. All right, now let's do our ability score increases. So I'm torn between putting +2 into intelligence and then 1 into strength. It'll give them both an 18, and this is a +4. That sounds awesome, having 2 18s off the bat. Also, having that constitution out of a 16 instead of a 14 would be beneficial, give you more HP. And also having the dexterity at a 10 instead of an 8 will get rid of a negative modifier in dexterity, which is not a stat you want to have a negative modifier in. I'm leaning towards that option. So I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put 1 into strength. I'm gonna put 2 into dexterity. This way, this character doesn't have a negative modifier for dexterity. It's a blank, even 0. So, final scores right now are strength at 18 for a +4, dexterity at 10 for a 0, constitution at 14 for a +2, intelligence at 16 for a +3, wisdom at 7 for a -2, and charisma at 13 for a +1. That looks pretty good to me. Now we're moving over to description to roll for our background. So the same thing, I have all the backgrounds on a spreadsheet. I'm gonna roll a D100, and that's gonna determine what background this character has. 93. That is Acolyte. Acolyte is basically a religious type person, right? You have spent your life in the service of a temple to a specific god or pantheon of gods. You act as an intermediary between the realm of the holy and the mortal world, performing sacred rites and offering sacrifices in order to conduct worshippers in the presence of the divine. You are not necessarily a cleric. Performing sacred rites is not the same thing as channeling divine power. So you don't have to be a cleric if you're an acolyte, although you can. So basically, our Aarakocra was raised in the reverence of a god or pantheon of gods. I wanted to wait to see what our background was before we picked our language. So I actually like the idea of this character not necessarily being from like an Aarakocra village or raised just by Aarakocras. I like the idea of them kind of being an orphan brought up in this kind of religious tone. So possibly Celestial, I'd say. Besides Common, this person probably grew up speaking Celestial to kind of aid in their religious studies. So Celestial. Background languages. So other languages that I think would be very useful in religious studies would be Abyssal and Primordial. Being an Acolyte, you also have Shelter of the Faithful. What that means is an Acolyte, you command the respect of those who share your faith, and you can perform the religious ceremonies of your deity. You and your adventuring companions can expect to receive free healing and care at a temple, shrine, or other established presence of your faith. Though you must provide any material components needed for spells. Those who share your religion will support you, but only you, at a modest lifestyle. So basically, you have connections to the religious realm. You might also have ties to a specific temple dedicated to your chosen deity or pantheon, and you have a residence there. This could be the temple where you used to serve if you remain on good terms with it, or a temple where you have found a new home. While near your temple, you can call upon the priest for assistance, provided the assistance you ask for is not hazardous and you remain in good standing with your temple. So these are just things that you can inherently use in your campaign because of the Acolyte background. So now we have an Aarakocra, we have a background, let's pick a name. Aarakocra names typically resemble the sounds that birds make, which makes them typically hard to pronounce to people of different races. So I'm going to think of, a name that kind of resembles bird noises. So how about Scraw? I like that. Scrawl the Aarakocra. So now the moment you've all been waiting for, now that we have our race, now that we have our background, now that we have our ability scores, let's decide which class will suit this character best. We have high strength, we have high intelligence, we have dirt poor wisdom. What do we do? Well, I've made up my mind already, guys. We are going to be a fighter. Master of martial combat, skilled with a variety of weapons and armor. So fighters are basically very straightforward. What does it sound like? They're fighters. In the original D&D, they were called fighting men. Maybe it's a little sexist, maybe it's a little racist. Fighting men. Your hit die is a D10. That means when you gain a level, you roll a D10 to see how many hit points you get for that level. Primary abilities are strength or dexterity. So strength is if you want to be more of a melee character, dexterity if you want to be more of a ranged character or a finesse character. You have proficiency in strength and constitution saves. So let's go ahead and pick fighter. All right, so here we are at level 1. So right now, max hit points is 12. I haven't rolled for hit points because at level 1, you get your maximum hit die, which is 10 for us, plus your constitution modifier, which is a +2 for us. So 12 hit points at level 1. We are proficient in all armor and shields. So fighters can wear medium, light, heavy armor. Although keep in mind, we have a flying speed that we cannot use if we're wearing heavy or medium armor. That needs to be kept in mind. We also are proficient with all weapons, simple and martial. Those are the only 2 weapon classes, folks. We are proficient with everything. No tool proficiencies, But like I said, we have strength and constitution saving throw proficiency. So now what we're going to do is we're going to choose what skills we want to have proficiency in. So right off the bat, athletics is kind of a no-brainer. This is a physically strong character. Our next one, let's kind of dive into our intelligence a little bit. History is a good one. Now, fighting style. You adopt a particular style of fighting as your specialty. Choose one of the following options. You can't take a fighting style option more than once, even if you later get to choose again. So, we choose a fighting style. But that's not the series, is it? We're gonna roll for this. We're gonna roll a d12, and whatever we get, that's our fighting style. 3. Our fighting style is defense. So while you're wearing armor, you gain a +1 bonus to AC. So this is a good thing. We can't wear medium or heavy armor because of our flying speed, but this allows us to wear light armor and get a boost to the AC. So this is a good thing. One of the best things about fighters as well is second wind. You have a limited well of stamina that you can draw on to protect yourself from harm. On your turn, you can use a bonus action to regain hit points equal to 1d10 plus your fighter level. Once you use this feature, you must finish a short or long rest before you can use it again. So let's come up with a backstory for this character, and let's see what he looks like, shall we? 4 years ago, a small group of paladins of Kord raided a cloud giant compound that was the hub of an illegal slave trade. Though they struggled, the paladins vanquished the giants and freed the 3 prisoners awaiting their turn to be sold. Among the prisoners was a female white dragonborn, a young half-orc boy, and an Aarakocra baby. The dragonborn returned to her home, and the young half-orc and Aarakocra baby were taken back to the paladin's temple as wards. The young half-orc, whose name was revealed to be Ronar, instantly took on a protective big brother role toward the small Aarakocra baby, making sure he was taken care of and never letting him out of his sight. Ronar gave the baby the name Scraw, after the sound he made when he was crying. Within 6 months, Scraw was nearly Ronar's size, and the two began training in combat under the paladins of Kord. As Scraw grew, strange abilities began to manifest within him. He found himself able to hear the thoughts of others, and eventually became able to communicate telepathically. The elders of the temple regarded these new abilities as a gift from Kord. Soon after the telepathic abilities emerged, Scraw also developed the ability to move things with his mind. In his training, Scraw worked on utilizing these newfound abilities to aid in his combat, developing a unique style of combat to himself. While Ronar became jealous of Scraw's special gifts, he himself excelled at channeling the divine power of his connection to Kord, something at which Scraw was never able to succeed. After 4 years, Scraw and Ronar had become respected warriors of the Temple of Kord. Scraw was never able to channel divine power from Kord, but still wears his holy symbol as reverence to Kord and the temple that gave him his life. And here we are. Here is Scraw, our fighter. I'm pretty happy with this. This is definitely a character I would consider playing. All right, people, thank you so much for coming and hanging out with me during the first episode of Heart of the Dice. Let me know what you thought about it in the comment section below. Let me know what you thought about Scraw. Let me know what you would have built differently with these roles. Just let me know. Also, if you guys want to create some rolled characters like this, please let me know what you come up with. My email is countrichardquake@gmail.com. Send me the character sheets and I will display them on a future video and give my thoughts. All right, guys, I've been Count Richard Quake, and I hope